Okay, so let's unpack this. When you think of the ultimate rock frontman, I mean, the absolute definition of swagger, that enduring image of counterculture.
Yeah.
One name just immediately leaps out, Sir Michael Philip Jagger.
hmm
But what if I told you the rebel who invented that role? The pouting, gyrating embodiment of anti-establishment freedom is also one of the most astute, calculating, and successful businessmen in modern music history.
And what's fascinating here when you look at the sources is the sheer breadth of it. This isn't just a discography review or a list of his girlfriends.
No.
It's a comprehensive biographical overview. We're talking 8 decades of one incredibly dense life. So our mission today is really a deep dive into the totality of that career, which means we have to look beyond the stage prism.
Go beyond.
We have to get into the astute financial architect, the, intermittent actor, the lightning rod for controversy, and the artist who somehow maintained relevance and power for over 60 years.
Absolutely. We're dissecting the blueprint for longevity, for reinvention. This is an individual who perfected the art of balancing two, well, completely contradictory identities.
Right.
How does a figure who perfectly embodied that anti-establishment ethos, the guy the authorities were constantly trying to jail, also become essentially the chief executive officer of the world's most lucrative touring machine?
It's the central question.
It is. So for you, the listener, this deep dive is a masterclass in operational longevity. It's the story of the learner who studied finance at the London School of Economics and ended up owning the ultimate counterculture brand. We're tracing that tension point all the way from his disciplined upbringing in Dartford, right through to the billion-dollar tours of the 21st century.
So to understand the global icon, you really have to start in Dartford, Kent, 1943. Michael Philip Jagger. He wasn't born into bohemian poverty. That's the standard rock star myth.
Not at all.
No, he was born into a thoroughly disciplined, stable, middle-class family.
And this is such a brilliant starting contradiction, isn't it? I mean, the ultimate symbol of unrestrained youthful energy grew up with a physical education teacher for a Father Basil Joe Jagger.
Right, a gymnast.
A gymnast, exactly. And Joe Jagger is credited with helping to popularize basketball in Britain. So you have the discipline, the physical rigor, the awareness of athletic performance literally baked into his genetics before he ever even stepped on a stage.
Precisely. And, the discipline didn't even end there. His mother, Eva, was a hairdresser who was also politically active, specifically in the Conservative Party.
Which is just the perfect irony.
It's crucial context. The parents represent discipline, athletic health, and, political conservatism. The exact institutional opposite of the persona Mick Jagger would cultivate in the 1960s.
So that rebellious image was a deliberate rejection of his own stable roots.
It had to be, although it is noted in the sources that the fundamental passion was always there. He always sang as a child, in the church choir.
Right.
And he loved listening to singers on the radio, BBC, Radio Luxembourg, or watching them on TV and in movies. So this wasn't some sudden haphazard ambition. The joy of performance was an early constant.
So the foundation was stability in performance, but the content that came from somewhere else. Now we get to the most famous origin story in rock history, the one that broke him out of that middle-class trajectory. The meeting with Keith Richards.
The full story is actually a bit more layered. They first met as classmates at Wentworth Primary School way back in 1950.
Oh, that early?
Yeah, but they lost contact when Jagger's family moved. It was just a childhood friendship that faded. The crucial second meeting, the one that launched everything that happened over a decade later. October 17th, 1961 at Dartford Railway Station.
And what sparked it wasn't just a casual hello. It was the records Jagger was carrying.
Exactly. Chuck Berry's Rockin' at the Hops and an album by Muddy Waters.
In 1961 England, these were not common LPs.
Not at all. This revealed a shared, specific, and frankly niche interest in American R&B and electric blues, a sound so far removed from the polite British pop of the time, that instant recognition that he'd found another blues devotee that cemented everything.
But this is where we connect the dots back to your central point, the LSE background. This is what you, the listener, really need to remember. Before he was the rebel, he was a serious student.
Mm-hmm. Before dropping out in '63, Jagger had passed 7 O-levels and 2 A-levels. He was actively studying finance and accounting at the prestigious London School of Economics on a government grant.
And that's a key detail. LSE is not a party school.
No.
It's a highly competitive institution known for producing economists, politicians, business leaders.
Yeah.
He was legitimately on a path to a high-powered, high-finance career.
He absolutely was. The sources make it clear he was not automatically destined for rock stardom. He had seriously considered becoming a journalist or even a politician. He even compared the ambition of a politician, that desire for influence, public performance control, to that of a pop star.
Which suggests a deep, lifelong fascination with public identity, with brand management, with the control of large systems, whether those systems were financial markets or a global rock band.
He was training to understand the structure of wealth and power, while at the same time falling in love with the music of rebellion.
The irony is just delicious.
Yeah.
You have the future CEO of a major touring corporation literally training for that job while secretly building the foundation of the world's greatest anti-corporate band.
He had the foresight of a banker and the theatrical instincts of a bluesman.
And that foundation started simply. They were the Blues Boys in the mid-50s, with Dick Taylor playing the stuff they loved.
Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, Chuck Berry, a deep immersion in authentic American music.
Their entry into the professional circuit was through Alexis Corner's Blues, incorporated at the legendary Ealing Club. Initially, they played for basically no money, often borrowing Corner's equipment. The hustle was real.
Their first recorded gig as a unit was July 12, 1962, at the Marquee Club. The name was already chosen, pulled from a Muddy Waters song, The Rolling Stones.
And that initial lineup, Jagger, Richards, Brian Jones, Ian Stewart on piano, Dick Taylor on bass, was just this fluid group of young guys captivated by American blues, just scraping by, foreshadowing none of the global empire that would follow. Okay, so once the basic structure of the band was in place, the strategic move that differentiated them from everyone else came pretty quickly.
Abandoning covers.
Exactly. Abandoning covers and establishing the Jagger-Richards songwriting partnership. This was where the brand was truly forged.
And that shift was largely pushed by their manager at the time, Andrew Loog Oldham. He was the one who saw the Beatles' success, driven by Lennon and McCartney's originals, and recognized that for real longevity and wealth, the LSE goal, if you will, they needed intellectual property.
You can't just keep playing Willie Dixon and Chuck Berry covers.
Right. Though that partnership took some time to develop. One of their earliest compositions was As Tears Go By, but they actually wrote it for Marianne Faithfull. It was almost like a practice run.
A practice run, yeah. But the real seismic events started with their own material, like the last time, which was based on a Staple Singer spiritual. And then, of course, I Can't Get No Satisfaction.
That song, more than any other, just immediately established the Rolling Stones' image as defiant troublemakers.
And that intentional contrast was brilliant marketing. The sources highlight it. They were positioned in stark contrast to the Beatles' image as lovable mop-tops.
The Beatles were safe for your parents. The Stones were dangerous.
It was so calculated. Jagger initially claimed he was just being me, not trying to be rebellious. But that very claim, combined with the raw sound, the provocative lyrics, it was an aggressive act of countercultural rebellion.
And the conservative social structure, well, it responded in kind. By 1967, the band faced intense scrutiny, culminating in the notorious drug scandals. The spark was a News of the World feature. Pop stars and drugs. Facts that will shock you.
And here's a deeply ironic detail. The article's based on a reporter who misidentified the drug user. He thought he saw Jagger when it turned out to be Brian Jones.
And Jagger, the future legal architect of the band, actually filed a libel writ against the paper.
But the authorities seized the opportunity anyway.
Oh, absolutely. Despite the libel writ, the police hounded them, leading to unusually harsh sentences that shocked even the British establishment. This was about making an example of them. Jagger was sentenced to 3 months for 4 over-the-counter pep pills he bought legally in Italy.
3 months for that. And Richards.
1 year for allowing cannabis to be smoked on his property.
That is just astronomical. It was so excessive, and it showed the cultural war being waged against them.
But the backlash was swift and powerful. Even the traditionally conservative editor of the Times, William Rees-Mogg, a very powerful figure, openly criticized the sentences.
In that famous editorial, "Who breaks a butterfly upon a wheel?"
Exactly. That was a watershed moment. The public pressure became intense. Richard's sentence was overturned. Jagger's was amended to a conditional discharge, though he did spend 1 night in Brixton prison.
And that whole episode just solidified their image as martyrs for the counterculture.
It fused their legal troubles directly into their artistic identity.
It turned them from rock stars into political symbols. But as the 60s closed, That symbol became stained with real tragedy and violence. We have to talk about Brian Jones.
Yeah, by the time of the Beggar's Banquet album, Brian Jones, one of the founders, was contributing only sporadically. The weight of the lifestyle was just crushing him. Jagger noted bluntly that Jones was not psychologically suited to this way of life.
The discipline and financial acumen required to survive the Stones. That was completely foreign to Jones's erratic nature.
He left the band in June 1969, and less than a month later, he tragically drowned at his home. Jagger's feelings on this, which he expressed years later, are incredibly complex.
A lot of guilt.
A deep sense of guilt, but also distance. He admitted behaving childishly, picked on him, but also said that Jones made himself a target. He also confessed to a profound ignorance about drug addiction back then, LSD and cocaine, which made him unable to handle Jones's behavior.
And this tragedy immediately led to this massive public moment of grieving.
The Hyde Park concert, 2 days after Jones's death, for 250,000 people. They dedicated it to him. Jagger, wearing a white dress read from Shelley's Adonais, released thousands of butterflies. It was a huge staged theatrical moment of mourning.
A very controlled PR event around a very messy tragedy.
And that brief moment of mournful beauty was swiftly eclipsed by the catastrophe that definitively ended the decade. The Altamont Free concert.
The dark mirror image of Woodstock.
Exactly. The fatal stabbing of Meredith Hunter by a Hell's Angel near the stage became, as the source states, symbolic for the corruption of 1960s hippie idealism. It was absolute chaos.
Jagger later said he was scared shitless on stage.
He was. Altamont closed the 60s with a literal bang, cementing the Stones' reputation as the darker, more dangerous alternative, and forcing Jagger to realize that rebellion had real-world costs and it needed stricter management.
So if the 60s were about building the anti-establishment image and enduring the fallout, the 70s were about survival, and critically, financial shrewdness.
Which takes us directly back to the LSE training.
This is the moment the student becomes the CEO.
This is where the student of finance truly takes over. In early 71, Jagger and the Stones left the UK. They moved to southern France as tax exiles.
And the reason?
Avoiding Harold Wilson's Labour government's punitive 93% super tax on top earners. And you have to understand, this wasn't just high taxation, this was practically confiscatory.
So this wasn't some bohemian jaunt. This was a cold, hard, financially calculated business decision to protect their future earnings.
Oh, completely. The records show Jagger moved into his chateau near Bio in April 1971, just days before the new tax year began. That timing tells you everything.
And at the same time, the band's structure shifted. They split with their manager, Alan Klein.
An acrimonious split. They felt he'd poorly managed their finances, their IP, so Jagger stepped into that void. He assumed control of the band's entire business affairs in 1971 and has managed the group ever since.
This is the moment the rock god becomes a CEO.
Right. And he establishes a framework that protects their revenue streams for decades. He brings in a key business advisor, Prince Rupert Lowenstein, to ensure the financial operations remained professional and separate from the artistic chaos.
And that transition of power created, well, immediate and predictable tension with Keith Richards.
Of course. While Jagger was structuring the business for long-term survival, Richards was descending into heroin addiction. For Richards, Jagger's control looked like megalomania.
But for Jagger, it was simply securing their future, ensuring they could keep touring and recording on their own terms.
It was a necessary schism. Jagger's financial prudence saved the band's viability, but it created an artistic and personal gulf with Richards that would just widen over the next decade.
And alongside the financial shift came an aesthetic one. The 70s saw Jagger fully embrace the glam rock aesthetic.
A decisive move away from the ragged hippie look.
For their huge 1972 American tour, the Exile Tour, he adopted bold, glam rock clothing, jumpsuits, glitter makeup, transforming his stage persona again into something theatrical, sexual, and utterly polished.
Pure theatrical genius. And strategic image diversification. That famous jumpsuit from the 72 tour is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame now.
And defining albums just kept flowing, despite the internal chaos. Think of the masterpiece Exile on Main Street, recorded during the tax exile. Music critic Russell Hall even singled out Jagger's vocal on Let It Loose as his single best vocal achievement.
Which suggests that even with all the administrative chaos, his artistic power was peaking, evolving into a more emotional, soulful space.
It's also interesting to look at his side ventures then. He released Jamming with Edward, in 72.
Yeah, that wasn't a serious artistic statement. It was just loose, impromptu blues jams with Charlie Watts, Bill Wyman, Nicky Hopkins, Ry Cooder. They recorded it while they were waiting for Richards to show up to the studio.
That tells you a lot about the internal operations, doesn't it?
It does. Then the band faced more turmoil in 74 when Mick Taylor unexpectedly left.
Which triggered this frantic, almost chaotic search for a new guitarist.
The recording sessions for Black and Blue in 76 basically became an informal audition period.
The outcome was Ronnie Wood joining in 75. And Wood quickly proved valuable not just as a musician, but as an essential mediator between the feuding Jagger and Richards.
He was a piece of necessary corporate infrastructure, bridging the gap between the CEO and the chief creative officer.
And with Wood on board, the band kept evolving. Their 78 album, some girls saw them famously venture into disco and punk.
Genres that were absolutely contemporary at the time, and that direction was primarily led by Jagger, showing his willingness to constantly reinvent the brand, chase new sounds, even if it clashed with their blues roots. It kept them relevant.
Okay, so if the 70s stabilized the Stones as a financial entity, the 80s nearly tore them apart.
Artistically and personally, we enter the period famously dubbed World War III,
where the relationship between the two main partners just completely fractured.
and this rift had been developing for a decade. It was noted as early as the Emotional Rescue sessions in 1980. Richards desperately wanted to tour to promote the album.
He believed their power was on the road.
Right. But Jagger, who was more focused on his own identity, pursuing a different sound, he just declined. And that was the opening salvo.
And according to the sources, his motivation wasn't just spite. It was a sincere desire to establish an artistic identity for himself apart from the Rolling Stones.
He didn't want the band to be the only thing defining his global image anymore. He wanted his own narrative.
So he launched his solo career, She's the
Yeah.
Boss, in 1985, and the choice of producers was telling.
Contemporary giants, Nile Rodgers and Bill Laswell.
Not old blues cronies. He was collaborating with the architects of modern pop and funk, with musicians like Jeff Beck, Herbie Hancock, Pete Townsend.
And it was a commercially strong debut. Just Another Night was a top 10 hit, which confirmed he could succeed outside the mothership.
And he capitalized on that individual fame spectacularly at Live Aid in 85, performing without the Stones,
Which led to those high-profile collaborations, the duet with Tina Turner.
where he famously tore away her skirt on stage.
And even more significant, the transatlantic duet of Dancing in the Street with David Bowie. The video was shown simultaneously at Wembley and JFK stadiums. The single went to #1 in the UK.
This was Jagger operating as a massive, independent, global entertainment force, proving his viability as a solo brand.
And that independence is exactly what fueled World War III with Richards.
Let's look at Richard's side. He had managed to end his heroin use, and he became more present, more authoritative in the band's decisions.
And the sources suggest Jagger resented that. He was not accustomed to Richards' presence and felt his authority over the business he had rebuilt, was being diminished.
So when the Stones released Dirty Work in 86, Jagger's response was decisive. He flat out refused to tour.
A decision that was almost catastrophic for the brand. Touring is the lifeblood of the Stones ecosystem. Shutting that down meant shutting down the whole financial engine.
And Jagger defended it, saying he felt he ought to be allowed to have one's artistic side apart from just being in the Rolling Stones.
It was a primal clash of egos. The stability of the billion-dollar band versus one individual's artistic freedom.
And the market responded. His next solo album, Primitive Cool, didn't match the debut's sales. And Richards quickly followed with his own successful solo debut, Talk is Cheap.
And this period just cemented the feeling that the Rolling Stones were not just resting, they were over.
So how did they bridge that massive gulf?
It took personal sacrifice and external validation. They reunited in Barbados in '88, and Richards recounts his sacrifice of taking Jagger to discos, a scene he loathed, just to humor him.
The pirate of rock and roll forcing himself into a dance club just to placate the rock CEO.
Yeah.
The stakes must have been high.
At the same time, Ron Wood observed that the modest sales of Primitive Cool had surprised Jagger. Jagger, the ultimate businessman, realized that while he was a successful solo act, the strength of the band brand was exponentially greater than his own.
And that realization, coupled with Richards' willingness to compromise, provided the bridge.
The reconciliation resulted in dozens of new songs, culminating in the 1989 album Steel Wheels, and crucially, the massive 1989-1990 World Tour, which proved the brand was not just alive, but more lucrative than ever.
So having survived World War III, The Stones entered the 90s as the undisputed champions of sustained touring dominance.
A financial machine engineered largely by Jagger's business foresight, the LSE training was fully manifesting.
The numbers are just staggering. The Voodoo Lounge Tour in the mid-90s grossed $320 million, a record at the time.
Then, a Bigger Bang tour in 2007 grossed $437 million, earning them a Guinness World Record for the most lucrative music tour ever.
If you look at the cumulative scale, the efficiency is clear. Between '89 and 2001 alone, the Stones generated over $1.5 billion in gross revenue.
That's more than U2, Springsteen, and Michael Jackson during that same period.
It confirms that the man who studied finance was now operating a meticulously managed global financial entity that fundamentally changed how stadium rock operates.
And he was simultaneously maintaining his own artistic vitality. He continued his solo work. Wandering Spirit in '93 was successful, featuring collaborations with contemporary artists like Lenny Kravitz and Flea.
Always assimilating new sounds, staying current.
Right. And he kept up high-profile collaborations. After 9/11, he joined Richards for the concert for New York City. Then in 2004, he co-wrote and performed the Golden Globe-winning single Old Habits Die Hard for the film Alfie.
And that desire to constantly fuse styles led to the formation of Super Heavy in 2011.
A true supergroup. Dave Stewart, Joss Stone, Damian Marley, A.R. Rahman. The whole idea was to fuse different musical styles, rock, reggae, soul, Bollywood sounds. They reportedly recorded 29 songs in just 10 days.
Just incredible creative energy. He also maintained his status as a cultural figurehead at the highest levels. In 2012, he performed blues at the White House for President Obama.
Which perfectly encapsulates his shift from counterculture symbol to cultural statesman.
And the anecdote from that event is fantastic.
Oh yeah. When Jagger performed Sweet Home Chicago and held the mic out to the president, Obama didn't hesitate. He just sang the line, "Come on, baby, don't you want to go?"
A moment that shows his universal cross-generational reach. He also continued to engage with his own history, headlining Glastonbury in 2013, playing Hyde Park for the first time since the '69 tribute to Brian Jones.
But despite all the establishment recognition, he remained highly engaged with current politics.
The post-Brexit single.
Yes. In 2017, he released Gotta Get a Grip, England Lost, as a direct response to the anxiety, unknowability of the changing political situation. He never fully shed that politicized image from the 60s.
Which brings us to the challenges of aging. Despite his famously healthy lifestyle, running, kickboxing, ballet, yoga, he faced a major health scare in 2019.
The heart procedure. He had to postpone the tour for a transcatheter aortic valve replacement, a TAVR.
And the fact that he needed it speaks to the challenges of age, but the speed of his recovery. That speaks to the incredible physical discipline from his PE teacher father.
It was successful, and he resumed the tour after just a 6-week delay. It's almost unbelievable. It's pure athleticism. The sources estimate he covers between 5 and 12 miles on stage per show. That's a 10K run while singing. And the band kept breaking records. The 2020 reissue of Goat's Head Soup topped the UK charts, making them the first band to hit #1 across 6 different decades.
Then, in response to COVID, they released Living in a Ghost Town.
Their first original music since 2012. It reached #1 on the German singles chart, their first time in 52 years, making them the oldest artist ever to do so.
Astonishing ability to maintain contemporary relevance.
But tragically, the era of the core lineup ended in 2021 with the loss of Charlie Watts.
And the question was, could they survive it?
They opted to carry on because, as Jagger said, it was what Charlie wanted us to do. During the first post-Watts show, Jagger dedicated it to him, recalling that Watts held the band together, a deeply personal loss that required the CEO to manage an intensely emotional crisis for the organization. So, beyond the stage and the balance sheets, Jagger's personal life has been a relentless public presence, and we have to address it, not as gossip, but as a crucial engine that fueled the band's imagery and often the music itself.
The sheer volume of it tells a story. 8 children with 5 women, 7 grandchildren, and as of 2024, 3 great-grandchildren. He's running his own dynasty.
If we trace a few key relationships, his time with Marianne Faithfull was incredibly influential. She was the quintessential counterculture muse of the late 60s. They co-wrote Sister Morphine.
Then there's Marcia Hunt, mother of his first child, Karis, and rumored to be the inspiration for Brown Sugar. His official marriage was to Bianca Perez Mora Macias from '71 to '78.
Bianca was a style icon, the jet-set muse for the early '70s Stones.
His longest partnership was with Jerry Hall from '77 to '99. They had an unofficial ceremony in Bali, but it was later declared invalid after she discovered his affair with Luciana Jimenez.
And of course, the affair with Carla Bruni, who later became the First Lady of France. This pattern of high-profile partners consistently kept his image in the public eye, leveraging personal intrigue into cultural capital.
More recently, he was with designer Elren Scott until her tragic suicide in 2014. She left her entire estate to him, and he, in turn, established a scholarship in her honor.
And then most recently, he welcomed his eighth child, Devereaux, with Melanie Hamrick in 2016, a father again at 73.
And this brings us back to his professional diversification. His film career. The early roles in Performance and Ned Kelly often blurred the line between the rock star and the character.
What's fascinating are the roles he almost took. He auditioned for Dr. Frank Enfurter in Rocky Horror and was approached for Jodorowsky's Dune. He had to leave Werner Herzog's Fitzcarraldo because of Stone's touring conflicts.
And that last detail is key. It shows the Stones business always took ultimate priority. The CEO protects the core asset.
And that business focus extended into production. He co-founded Jagged Films in '91 and Lip Service in '95. This wasn't a vanity project. This was diversifying the brand.
They produced everything from the WWII drama Enigma to the James Brown biopic Get On Up.
He even extended his influence into TV. He co-created and executive produced the HBO drama Vinyl alongside Martin Scorsese. He became the custodian and narrator of the very mythology he lived.
All these threads, the business, the sexuality, the performance, contribute to his massive, enduring legacy. Philip Norman described him as having a disturbingly physical power, comparing his early style to a male ballet dancer with conflicting sexuality.
And we shouldn't overlook his vocal impact. Stephen Van Zandt noted that the acceptance of Jagger's voice on pop radio was a turning point because his bluesy delivery broke the door open for others like Eric Burdon and Van Morrison.
And that physical vitality is legendary. He's now a poster boy for healthy living. It's no wonder he was knighted in 2003, though he said the honor was less significant to him than the pride it brought his father, a final nod to his Dartford roots.
But maybe the most unexpected testament to his impact is outside of music entirely. There are multiple fossil species named after him.
Right. Jagger Merrick's Naida, a 19-million-year-old long-legged pig whose lips scientists thought resembled his.
And Petroperla Mick a stonefly placed in a new family called Petroperlidae, or simply rolling stoneflies. His influence extends into the paleontological record.
You know, for a man who defined rebellious youth and longevity, the greatest irony is the one he imposed on himself, that 1975 quote, "I'd rather be dead than sing Satisfaction when I'm 45.
And here he is, well into his 70s, still performing it to sold-out stadiums, demonstrating that the ultimate financial blueprint involved never retiring the key product. Hashtag, tag, outro.
What an incredible journey. The middle-class LSE student who became the king of Dionysian swagger, defining the anti-establishment while simultaneously using his sharp business instincts to ensure his own wealth and longevity.
And that tension between the wild persona and the astute, cautious CEO, it isn't a contradiction.
No, it's the single defining, brilliant feature of his entire career.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, his greatest talent, aside from performing, might truly be his ability to surround himself with a group of very able executives. By taking control in '71, he fundamentally changed how a rock band operated.
He turned the Stones into a vertically integrated multinational corporation.
He's a pioneer of the modern music industry, a model copied by every billion-dollar touring act that followed.
So what does this all mean for the legacy? It means that behind the lips and the glitter, there is a meticulous, calculating genius. And our sources point to one final, provocative mystery that encapsulates this duality.
The rebels' refusal to fully reveal the CEO.
Exactly. The source notes that Jagger, despite refusing to write an autobiography, was once persuaded to prepare a manuscript in the early 80s. He completed a massive 75,000-word manuscript.
But then, in a moment of extreme control, he withdrew his support, and it remains unpublished, locked away.
So considering his early ambitions, his unique position as the rebellious frontman who was also the CFO of this massive machine, we have to ponder what untold stories, what essential business insights, and what final true definitions of his complicated identity are locked away in those 75,000 words.
That unreleased manuscript might be the final piece of the puzzle.
And until it sees the light of day, the true depth of Sir Mick Jagger's mastery remains tantalizingly out of reach.